Happy Tuesday, Broncos country, man. Hope you guys are having a good one. We are a couple days away from another joint practice. The Arizona Cardinals are coming to town on Thursday for a joint practice with the Broncos before we play on Saturday night here. And, the first game, we talked about it in length. People are panicking. There's no reason to. But there was some ugly stuff that we need to clean up with. And one of the things that really stood out to me, man, was the play of the offensive line, specifically the starters. And really in particular, one starter. And I want to give a special credit and special shout out to David Talks Broncos because he was the first one that had mentioned this possibility. Now, that person that we're talking about obviously is Ben Powers, and he talked about the possibility of maybe we move on from him, or is there something that you can do with Ben Powers? And looking into it, I don't think that there's much, but we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about him as the player. What's the best thing to do for the Broncos moving forward? Do you really want to mess with one of the strengths of the team last year in the offensive line and shift things up a little bit? I think we can make the argument, especially this year, because we've got somebody that might be ready as after being in the wings for the last couple of years. So like and subscribe, guys, if you love Denver sports, and let's get into a little bit of Ben Powers talk. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So looking at a couple of PFF grades over the course of the last couple seasons. So this is in 2023. Looking at Ben Powers, he finished the season with a 59.7 run blocking grade and a 62.1 pass blocking grade, right? He's always kind of a lower tier guard. He's not one of the worst, but he's certainly not one of the best when it comes to that. But here's some big keys now. So this is the Russell Wilson year. He gave up 4 sacks and he gave up 31 pressures overall, right? And then moving into 2024, you can see that he gave up 3 sacks this year. So he had a little bit of an improvement in the sack rate and 24 pressures with 18 hurries. And his grades improved a little bit. Now, I think some of that is being in the system, after, for another year is helpful. Another one is Bo Nix at quarterback helps a lot too, right? With getting less pressures and obviously getting less sacks. But really not all that good. Like he's good for at least a pressure a game on average, about a pressure and a half per game he's giving up. Very inconsistent player. But he's never been bad enough to where like it's a glaring hole, but he's certainly not that good. Specifically in the run blocking category. He's actually a little bit of a better pass protector over the course of his career than he is in run blocking. And so when you look at the interior of the line and you say to yourself, all right, well, we've got a really good pass protecting offensive line overall, right? The interior of the line, we got Wattenberg in the middle. He's a very good pass protector, but his big weakness right now has been protecting in the run game, obviously. And something that I think he's working on and he's going to get better at. So when you have that, and then you mix in the guy next to him on the left side, and Ben Powers also struggling, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for you to be more consistent running the football when really 2 of your 3 interior offensive linemen are not very good when run blocking. So that's something to keep in mind there. But here's the thing that's kind of holding any possibility, in my opinion, of Ben Powers not being on the team this year. It's his contract situation. That's really what it boils down to. And when you look into the contract numbers, after his first year, he actually restructured in last offseason to help out with taking on that big cap hit number and kind of give us a lot of relief. As a part of that restructure, it actually pushed out and guaranteed, another $4.2 million, really, if you add the $2.1 million together. It added a little bit of that a year later. So it allowed for us to not be able to move on from him as easily as possible. But technically, if the Broncos did want to move on from Ben Powers, which I think is extremely unlikely, we would still technically save about $2.2 million. It's pretty, it's pretty much irrelevant in terms of the savings. Here's where it becomes interesting. All right. Now with the Broncos this upcoming season are making a little bit more of a transition to a wide zone scheme, a little bit more like the Shanahan, whereas over the past couple of years under Streif and Sean Payton, we've kind of ran a mix of the two, but we've emphasized a little bit more of the power blocking scheme. Now we're going to emphasize and do a little bit more of the wide zone blocking scheme. The wide zone does not suit Ben Powers very well, in my opinion. He's not the most athletic guy. He's somebody that definitely does better in a power-based scheme rather than having to really, run out and get a lot more movement going on. He's not the most athletic guy. It's why he was really good when he was in Baltimore, even though he was never a full-time starter. And the times that he played a lot better than he did. And I think that also led to a lot of the inconsistencies that you've seen over the last couple of years, right? He's done well in the power schemes, but in the times we were running a little bit more zone, he's struggling a little bit. And because we were inconsistent in terms of what exactly we were running on the offensive line, I think you saw the inconsistency translate to Ben Powers in his game. But now we're going to a type of scheme that really doesn't fit his strengths. But there could be other teams out there that run a power scheme that feel like Ben Powers would be a very, very good upgrade for them compared to what they have. And they could potentially reach out to the Broncos for a trade. Now, I don't think that they would fully take on the contract, even though the contract is honestly a pretty easy contract to trade. Yes, you have a $17.4 million cap hit this year, but you don't have really any long-term money tied up into them after this upcoming season. They could also restructure if they wanted to have a little bit more of a long-term commitment to him because he's only 28 years old. So something to think about. Again, I think that that's very highly unlikely because, and the reason that I think it's getting brought up a lot more this year, not just because of the scheme change that we're making, but there's a guy that I think is waiting in the wings that we had drafted last year that we kind of forgot about that's really been impressive. He was impressive in the first preseason game as well. We'll see if he can continue to stack days. But that is Nick Gargiulo. You know, somebody that we took in the 6th round last year. He was kind of the forgotten man, right? Overshadowed by like the Estime pick in the 5th round. Everyone wanted the running back, the sexy running back to work out. And Chris Abrams drained how well he played as a 5th rounder. And then obviously Devon Vele as a 7th rounder. He played super well. But, you know, Nick Gargiulo was kind of the forgotten guy, and he didn't end up making the team last year. He didn't really have a very good offseason last year. If I remember, he might have even dealt with a little bit of injuries. But he's kind of that, like I said, he was that forgotten other 7th round pick that we had on this team. You know, he played 4 years at Yale, so he's super smart dude. And then he played in South Carolina in the SEC last year, and he played a lot of football, guys. This is something that Sean Payton and George Payton really like. Someone that plays a whole bunch of football, man. And he definitely did a lot of that. I think he played over 50 games in his NFL career. He started 12 games in his final season at South Carolina. He played 5 of them at left guard, and then they shifted him over to center. So he's got a lot. He's got that guard center versatility, but he's a big dude, strong guy, you know, 6'5", almost 6'6", 318 pounds is what he measured at the combine. There's some talks now that he's up over 330, very strong, stout dude. Thought he's looked really good. And he could be an interesting player because if he's somebody that, you know, fits a little bit better in this wide zone scheme, which I can't say I know whether he does or doesn't, or they just feel like he's ready to make the next step, it's something that you've got to consider, man. When you're building a roster, I always try to tell people this. You don't always, like, as fans, I think we always look at this upcoming season, and I get that. Totally makes sense, especially for how important the season is for Broncos country. But it's always about the long term. And if Nick Gargiulo is in your long-term plans to eventually be a starter, you might as well get the process of that rolling more quickly by getting him in there, getting him some experience right off the bat, getting an extra year of him, you know, playing while under a very cheap rookie contract. So those are just some things, conversations that I'm sure are being had or I've had, or maybe George Payton has thought about over the course of maybe the entire offseason or maybe the last few weeks. Regardless, I don't think anything is going to happen, but it's something that's worth noting. Another guy is Alex Forsyth. Alex Forsyth struggles quite a bit in pass pro. We know that. Do I think he can get better? Absolutely. There's no reason to not think that he couldn't improve there, but he's very, very good in the run game. And he's very good in the wide zone scheme. He is an athletic guy. He likes to get to the second level and he likes to block downfield. So he fits in this new system that we're kind of running on the offensive line better as well. So he's another option as well. So between those two guys, it could potentially make Ben Powers expendable, or at least cause Sean Payton and George Payton to pick up the phone and answer if other teams are calling, inquiring about Ben Powers. Because, man, it makes a lot of sense. And plus, injuries happen. Somebody goes down. That's a starter for a team that has, you know, aspirations to make a run for the Super Bowl. You could do a lot worse than somebody like Ben Powers too, man. So I'd like to know what y'all think below in the comments. I think it's an interesting discussion and something that we should, you know, not be overly surprised on if you hear some reports of it, or if ultimately something happens where Ben Powers is not the starting left guard come week 1 at Tennessee. Again, in my opinion, I think it's a very low chance. But it's also one of those that really wouldn't surprise me at this point when you kind of go through all of the different options. That's all we got today, man. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Y'all take care of yourselves. Go Broncos. And until the next video, peace.